Welcome to Pragmatic Talks, a podcast and video series where we discuss startups, contemporary digital product development, modern technologies, and product management. We believe that everyone should have equal access to knowledge about product development and entrepreneurship, and also everyone should have the opportunity to apply it in pursuit of making our world a better place. Through this series, we aim to create an impact on the future world. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Klipp. Welcome everyone. Today we have a great news for you. Pragmatic Talks became a media partner for ACE conference. What does it mean to you? It means that pretty soon you will have a chance to watch a few new episodes that we are going to record during the conference with brilliant speakers, brilliant guests who are already invited for the ACE conference. But before we are going to release those episodes, we decided to invite Paul Klipp, who is ACE conference organizer, and with whom we are going to discuss what ACE conference is all about. Welcome, Paul. Maybe let's start with the history. So ACE is the oldest Polish Agile conference. So how did it start and why did you start it?
Well, I actually, it wasn't going to be the ACE conference. I was speaking at conferences. This was over a decade ago when I was promoting my software company. And one of the conferences at which I spoke was in Kiev, and it was Agile Eastern Europe. And at the end of the conference, the organizer said, you know, if you consider yourself good at project management, you ought to try organizing a conference. And I thought, well, I do consider myself good at project management. And at the time, the idea was that Agile Eastern Europe would be a moving conference. It would be in Kiev, in Warsaw, in Prague. It would move around Eastern Europe and Central Europe. And so I invited him to do it in Kraków. And he changed his mind and decided, no, he's just going to keep it local. But I was committed at this point. And also, I realized regional conferences were popping up around Europe. There was only one that was east of Germany. Actually, there was only one east of France at that point. Agile Prague hadn't started up. And so I realized that if I didn't hurry up and start a great Agile conference in Kraków, somebody would do it in Warsaw.
Later on they did. But
later on they did. It would have been really hard to establish an Agile conference in Kraków if there was one in Warsaw already. But starting one in Warsaw after there's one in Kraków makes more sense. They've got their own community, their own environment, and so that's where it came from. I think the first one was in 2010.
First one was 2010. Yeah, I think I remember that. Actually, ACE was one of the first, if not the very first Agile conference I attended. I believe it was the second edition in 2011. And I remember that was a life-changing experience for me because that was one of the first situations when I met so many like-minded people who were talking about Agile, who were discussing their problems, their issues that they had in their at their work environment, and they were helping each other. And I remember that there were a couple of people who helped me at that time to fix some issues at my organization at that time as well. So. Let's talk about those people, about the audience. Who is it for? Who is Agile made for, and why those particular people are invited to join ACE conference?
Well, you know, it's evolved. In the early days, I did ACE for me. I was a Scrum Master running a small software company. So it was all about mastering the tools that I was using. And the people who came were people like me. They were Scrum Masters and Agile coaches and developers who were interested in Agile practices. We started incorporating some more technical content for programmers. Designers started coming. And so the audience has kind of evolved over the years. In the early days, it was just hardcore Agilists. But these days, and we only had, I think, like 150 or so people at the very first one. But the last ACE had nearly 500 people. And I would say developers probably only made up about 20% of the audience. We're getting a lot of management, a lot of people who are interested in leadership and logistics and basically just how to run a company which is dependent on technology better, regardless of what their responsibility is in that company, which makes it a challenging event to curate.
Cool.
You have to please a lot of people.
Yeah, so how do you do that? How do you please those people?
Well, there's two things. One thing that helped dramatically is originally ACE was a one-track conference. And I want to say about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe not that long, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we added a second track. The ACE conference, I'm rather proud of this. The format is standard now. But when we started, all conferences had the same format, with the exception of TED. And that was a 1-hour talk, like many tracks, 1-hour talks with Q&A at the end. And I didn't like that personally as an attendee for two reasons. Number one, an hour is a long time to pay attention. If you can't make your point in half an hour, maybe you don't understand it all that well. And secondly, Q&A is subjecting 200 people to the curiosities of one person. And so a lot of people in the audience tune out during the Q&A period at the end. And so you've got this 1-hour period that really could be a lot punchier, a lot more dynamic. And so the ACE conference innovated the format of back-to-back half-hour talks without Q&A, which is now really common in the tech industry. And instead of having all that Q&A, we have open spaces in the middle of the conference. Now, there are other things we can do if you don't like open space, but you're a big fan of open space.
I just wanted to say that's my favorite part of this conference, especially this mix of the presentations and then open spaces, where usually all of the speakers are attending the open spaces as well, and you have an opportunity to ask them the questions directly, and there are a bunch of other people who are joining the discussion, and it's not, as you said, it's not a regular Q&A, it's more discussion, and then you can even disagree with the speaker on some topic and talk about it and exchange some ideas, which usually brings even better results.
Indeed, and that's one of the reasons why we have it. The other reason why we have it is it addresses that question of how do you please so many people. So when I am introducing the open space planning after the keynote speech on the first day, one of the things that I say is that we've got 26 great speakers. We've got a wide range of very interesting topics, but we can't cover everything. If you've got some burning issue, something you want to share, something you need to learn, this is the part of the agenda that you design. If you really wish I had included a talk on, I don't know, how to implement SAFe in the healthcare industry, sorry, I didn't. There is not a talk on that. But I bet you there's at least one other person in this audience who has some experience with that. And you can propose an open space session on non-traditional applications of Agile frameworks. And people will come, people who want to learn, people who have ideas, and people who have experience. And you can have exactly the conversation that you would wish you could have.
Yes, so if you haven't ever joined any unconference or haven't joined any open space discussion, I believe that this is the format that everyone should try at least once. And actually, I haven't met anyone who would say after experiencing it that this is something that they don't like, they didn't like, and they will not try it again. Like, it's actually pretty addictive, to be honest. So let's talk a little bit about this year lineup. You already mentioned 26 speakers, about the lineup, but also about the motto of this year conference. Maybe start with the motto, which is Beyond Frameworks, Here There Be Dragons. Yeah. So why this kind of motto? Why this year? And what does it mean for the audience?
One of the things that I've found challenging, but also really fun about ACE and empowering, if I'm being honest with myself, is the role of curation. A conference is a designed space, and it's a space that's designed for a particular community. And as a member of this community, I've been practicing Agile Software Development here in Kraków now for 20 years. We've known each other for 20 years. My goodness, it's been a long time. And so between being a practitioner, working with large corporations, working with small companies, knowing a lot of Agile practitioners, I really feel like I kind of have a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the Agile community in Europe in general. And in the early days, I think the first ACE had a lot of talks about things like how to do Scrum, how to facilitate a retrospective, And the conference content has evolved with the community. And so in my opinion, based on my experiences working with Agilists throughout Central Europe, the community is at a point now where if they wanted to do any particular framework, they know how to do it. In fact, they know how to improve on it. But what I think the community is ready for, and what I think is really exciting, is the idea of what is Agile without frameworks? How can you take that re-step and take everything you know about practicing Agile inside of a variety of frameworks and take it to the next step of making it fine-tuned for your particular organization's needs? Free the bounds of dogma.
I like it very much, especially that when I'm attending other conferences, Agile conferences, it's usually split between the advanced tracks and beginners tracks. Could I assume that this year edition of ACE conference will be more like a 100% advanced track conference for people who have a lot of experience, or it's also something that the people who are starting there, I know it's like 2024, but there are still some people who haven't heard about Agile, I think, or maybe they heard, but they don't know what it actually means. Do you think that this conference will be also attractive for the people who are beginners in Agile as well?
Now that's an interesting one, because what is beyond frameworks is the basics of Agile. What's beyond frameworks is a reevaluation of the fundamentals and how you can play with them and how you can incorporate them into whatever it is that you're doing. And so we don't have a single talk which is going to be about how you do X framework better. All of the talks are about basically how do you think better? How do you learn and improve better and faster? And that's going to be applicable to anyone regardless of where they are on their journey. And in fact, I think this kind of content is what I wish people had been teaching 10 years ago, because then we probably wouldn't have had to have so much content about how to fix your Scrum, how to scale your Scrum. Those are pretty fundamental questions that are answered by first principles. And this might be a little bit controversial, but I think that the Agile discipline has been harmed by the distance that has grown between Agile principles and frameworks.
And certification.
Certification is dangerous. Money corrupts.
Yes, exactly. So who is gonna speak about it? What is the lineup? Who are the speakers? I've already checked it, but I want to hear from you as well. I'm already excited both to see those people on stage, but also excited because I will have a chance to talk to some of them directly. I wish to talk with all of them. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be possible because of the time limits that we'll have for that. But speaking with few of them, recording episodes for all of you, that is really exciting already, and I cannot wait for that. So tell us a little bit more about the speakers that you invited this year.
Oh goodness, we have got, if not the best, certainly one of the best speaker lineups that we've ever had. Jim Benson is coming back. He came to one of the first ACEs. I think he spoke at the second or third ACE. And that was back when his big thing was personal Kanban. But he just came out with this new book, The Collaboration Equation. I love this book. If you haven't read The Collaboration Equation, highly, highly recommended book. It makes me regret that I'm not running a company anymore, because I want to do with a group of people what is in that book. So if anyone wants to hire me to implement the collaboration equation, I would love to do it in your company. It's absolutely brilliant, but it's fundamental. It's a book about how to create an environment in which people can create their own best solutions collaboratively to problems, which is so much more powerful than bringing in a consultant to tell you how to do it, because the people understand what they need and the people understand their context better than any outsider ever can. And so he's going to be talking about that. We've got Jenny Jepsen, who co-authored a book on leadership with David Marquette, who's going to be talking about leadership. And I think leadership is a wonderful topic. A lot of people think that leadership is a topic for leaders in organizations, leaders who have leadership in their title, in their hierarchy. But in my experience, you put any group of people together, any group, call it a team of software developers. You don't tell anybody who the leader is. They'll figure it out. There are leaders in every group, and everyone and anyone can step up. And so having a grounding in leadership techniques and leadership thinking is going to be incredibly advantageous to anyone, no matter where they are in their career. They can use it right now in order to influence positively whatever groups of people they're working with, and they can use it in the future as they grow their careers. We've got Gojko Adic. We've got a whole wonderful lineup of product speakers. I got deeply involved with the European product community a few years ago when Marty Kagan hosted a special gathering, a train the trainer program that was invitation only for like the top product leaders, and I was very flattered to be invited to that. And so we got to spend nearly a week with Marty Kagan and his team, and with all of the top European product leaders. And many of them will be at ACE this year. We've got Janet Bumpus, who's also a keynote speaker at other Agile conferences. Didn't have enough keynote slots for everybody. We've got Phil Hornby. We're covering the gamut of the product world. We're going to be talking about road mapping. We're going to be talking about customer interviewing. We're going to be talking about qualitative and quantitative research techniques, prioritization systems and such. Because this is where I think Agile is going. Mm-hmm. And that is that in the early days of Agile was about building successful products. I think we lost that. I think the Agile community dropped the ball on delighting customers, focusing too much instead on delivery. Yes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of places where you can lay the blame, but the product community is picking up that ball. And that's where they're really strong, building the right products. But when I meet with product leaders, their weakness is delivery. And so what might have been an agile space, creating great products in a great way, has now become a binary space in which you've got one school of thought, which is all about how to create the right thing, and another school of thought about how to create things right. I'm not sure whether going forward, those two things are going to coexist peacefully together.
Sounds like a Scrum Master and a product owner and a Scrum Master.
And I think that's actually the problem. I think that's actually the problem, is that product owners aren't product owners. Yeah. Scrum Masters aren't Scrum Masters. Product owner is a role which is played by an experienced product manager.
Exactly.
But it never is. Very rarely is a product owner actually a product manager. They're just a person who fields information from multiple sources and then channels it to the team. And a Scrum Master is supposed to be an Agile coach. At some point, we got this distinction where Agile coaches were senior to Scrum Masters, and the Scrum Master focused on just team synergies and collaboration. But that's just a role that a skilled, experienced Agile coach should be playing, changing the entire organization from the perspective of the team. And so we've got an entire track which is dedicated just to the product stuff. And in fact, I think this is where ACE is going to be going in the future. Historically, we've had the design track and the Agile track. Mm-hmm. But what it's really evolved into is a product delivery track and a product design track. ACE has become a product conference.
Well, aside of the speakers that you already mentioned, I've seen other brilliant names that you should all review when checking the website. We'll link to it into the show notes. aceconf.com, if I'm correct. There are plenty of brilliant people like Angel Diaz-Maroto, my old friend. Also, I know that there will be some energizers designed by brilliant Kuba Pedlak, who is also in that. So if you want to feel agile, that's a good experience as well. So check it out, and I'm sure that you will find something for you. And as you mentioned, when I seen the lineup, it's probably the best lineup of the Agile conference I could imagine. Especially nowadays, like the combination of all of these experienced leaders, experienced product people, experienced experts in Kanban, like Jim Benson. There are people who are awesome in the OKRs.
Oh yeah, Alan Kelly is just wrote the second edition of his book on OKRs and Agile. He'll be talking about that.
I am sometimes involved as a program committee member in the conferences, and we never ever had a possibility to invite so many great speakers to one event. Like, you have not enough keynote slots for those people, because like bunch of them, or at least all of them who we already mentioned, could be a keynote at any conference. So that's making this conference even better than it was ever before. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the people who want to attend, but they are not convinced yet, or they don't know if it's something for them. Maybe that will be their first time at the ACE conference. So what would you recommend to the first time attendees of the ACE conference?
We've got the delivery track, we've got the design track. Of course, we've got the workshop track. And so one thing definitely to look into is the workshops, because workshops are sign up, they're free. If you're attending the conference, free to attend the workshops, but it's first come, first serve. Sign up at registration for the workshop slots. And so definitely take a look and see if there's anything that you want to really get hands-on with. Look at the speakers and look at their bios and topics, because all of our speakers spend time at ACE interacting with the audience. ACE is very much a community event. It's the perfect size. It's not too big, it's not too small. And so it's big enough to network, but not big enough to get lost in. So you'll definitely have a lot of face time with anybody you want to meet. So decide in advance who you'd like to meet and have a conversation with. One thing I can say for all of these speakers, because I've been doing this long enough that I know every single one of them personally, they're really nice people. Really nice people.
One thing worth to mention, dinner with strangers.
Ah, yes.
And this is another opportunity to, aside of open spaces, to talk to brilliant people, not only the speakers, but also the attendees, and tell us more about it.
That was an idea that we started several years back, mainly because personally, I hate after parties. I'm a speaker at a lot of conferences. I've gone to a lot of after parties, and they always end up being, okay, not always, there's one exception. The after party at Agile by Example is pretty comfortable because they've got a lot of space and a big space. But it's almost always hundreds of people drinking thousands of liters of beer, underground someplace in the dark. The noise level is deafening. You don't meet anybody. It's painful to have a conversation. And I usually get out of there as fast as possible. I am aware that there are people who love that kind of environment, extroverts who just get really energized in that kind of a crowd and just love yelling over everybody else and having screamed conversations on the dance floor. But there's a lot of people who don't. And ACE is for everybody. And one of the things that, this is something that you learn from designing for people who have special needs, is that people who have special needs, and this includes introverts like myself, the adaptations that you do are good for everybody. So extroverts don't suffer when they're forced to have a pleasant conversation over dinner, whereas introverts do suffer when they're forced to have a screamed conversation in a crowded space. And so dinner with a stranger is an opportunity after the first night of the conference, instead of an after party, to sign up to go out to dinner at any of a number of restaurants in which we make reservations in advance. And people tend to do this, to choose their restaurants in one of two ways. Either they just choose a restaurant based on the kind of food and what they want to eat, or they look at the list of who's eating.
Who's already signed up.
Yeah, who's already signed up. And they go, wow, I could have dinner with Jim Benson and just sit and talk to Jim over a salad for 2 hours. What kind of conversations could you have? And granted, you don't get to meet hundreds of people, but you get to have a really good, intimate conversation with half a dozen or a dozen people. And that's where you learn, and that's where you form relationships.
Yeah, I must admit that I made bunch of relations, if not even calling it friendships, with some of the people who were attendees or speakers, like on the previous editions, like for example, Jürgen Appel or a few other people who I met at the dinner with strangers, and then we built this relation and we started this conversation. And those conversations are usually continued by the years after, and those relations are continued as well. And what is more important, for maybe not important, but something that is pretty cool about this dinners with strangers is that pretty often, not always, but pretty often, those groups who are split into these few restaurants, afterwards they are texting to each other, joining together, and go to some party where they drink hectoliters of beer, and they are speaking, exchanging some talks, and they are introducing people to each other, and like you're building even more relations. And the second day, the open space looks totally different than the first day, because people knows each other. All of the coffee breaks looks differently because people are continuing discussion from the previous day, and they are making this connection. They are making this connection stronger as well. So that's a great mix of the presentations, open spaces, coffee breaks, dinner with strangers, and then even more relation building.
That's also the reason why we have Kuba on Friday morning, opening with activities to wake everybody up.
I think we already wrap up everything what was the most important about ACE conference. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Yes. So ACE is constantly growing and evolving, and we do it by learning from you and listening to what you need and listening to your stories. One of the things I love about ACE is moving around and talking to people about their experiences. It's what informs how we build the next ACE. So it's designed entirely for you to make you happy. We hope that you're delighted. And what's more, in order to make it even easier for you to make the decision to attend ACE this year, which is only a few weeks away at this point, I'm going to give Victor here a coupon code to share with you for a 15% discount on your tickets. I'm sure he'll put it in the show notes.
Of course.
And we'd love to see you there.
If you'd like to join ACE conference with the 15% discount, the coupon you will find in the show notes. Remember, it's held in Kraków in Multikino on 13 and 14 June 2024. Feel invited to join us. It will be great to meet you, and maybe you will also appear at the promo video that we are also going to record during the events, and we'll be interviewing some of the attendees who will show up. So join us at ACE conference, and I cannot wait for that, because as we already mentioned, so many brilliant speakers, so many brilliant attendees. I know that a lot of my friends are attending as well, so I cannot wait to see all of those people, to meet them, and to talk to them and exchange some brilliant ideas and experiences. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Pragmatic Talks is delivered to you by Pragmatic Coders, the first choice software development partners for startup founders. Be sure to catch all new episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast channels. And if you are thinking about building your own startup or struggling with product development, contact us and find out what we can do together.